What was your role in all of this?
I was the assistant director.
Assistant director?
Yeah.
So you kind of helped to put shape on this, is it?
Exactly,
Yeah. Was that a difficult job?
It was long, but not difficult.
Okay.
Because we've been working on this for what?
4 years. Yeah.
4 years.
So I was 25.
For those of you who were wondering.
And now I'm nearly 30, so it was quite a while.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, well,
Are you happy you spent all that time with us?
yeah, we worked in 2 countries. Remember? Belgium. I had to fly to Belgium.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I think it's been a very rewarding project.
okay, 4 years is an incredibly long time to spend developing 65, 70 minutes of theatre. Obviously, part of that was the deep research, the visits to, what was the name of the road in Cork again?
Model Farm Road.
Model Farm Road and so on. But Richard, can I start with, can I continue by asking yourself? I mean, you're the author, so
Yeah.
I guess it started somewhere. So it started with you?
Yeah, it was, yeah, it started with me, yeah. I don't know, I think it's actually true, you know, like, how do I start this? I suppose I'm always interested in experts, you know, and maybe it comes from my father, who was always very suspicious. My dad left school when he was 14, so he always questions, what do you know, like, what do you know?
Yeah.
And let me put it this way, I studied architecture and I became an architect. And my first time going out working as an architect, people would ask me questions. No, I actually knew a good bit. I'd studied for like 6 years, whatever. And then they would ask me, like clients would ask me questions, and I'd go, I'm not too sure. And I'd give answers like this, you know. I'll get back to you on that one, because I didn't know, like, you know, like minor questions. And very quickly, like, my boss was telling me, you don't do that. You got to look like you know everything, you know. And I realised that's kind of, I don't know if anyone else has experienced like that either, as professionals or as, but there's like this performance of knowledge, and it's throughout life, and then there is knowledge, you know. And I thought that the news is kind of information and knowledge, but there's a performance going on in it as well, and I wanted to, I suppose, use theatre as a way to get our head around the performance, and use Shane's ability to perform to kind of explore it, yeah. So that's
I mean, very basic question, but how did you guys all meet up? I mean, how did you know? How did you get to know each other or find each other?
I'm a great man for affirmations, and about 6 years ago I had an affirmation in my head that I'd never been in a fringe show in Dublin before, and I wanted to be in a fringe show. So it was in my head, I'm in a fringe show, I'm in a fringe show, I'm in a fringe show, and the one thing that I saw advertised, they were looking for actors for a fringe show, was Dick's. And so I applied for it, I met Dick, and to be quite honest, I had no idea what he was talking about in the rehearsal room, not a clue, not a notion. And I said as much, I'm like, I have no idea what you're on about at all, but I'm interested. But I don't know what it is, but I'm interested. And sorry for dropping in, and he didn't give me the part. And at that time, I had never done this before, but I emailed him back, and I said, that's fine, no problem about not giving me the part. However, it's really interesting nonsense you're up to, and I want to know what it is, and if you ever want to do something, please keep me in the loop. I really, really want to work. And at the time, it gets deeper. At the time, Dick was rehearsing out of a squat beside his house in Dublin, and it was the best thing ever. You had to go out into his backyard with a ladder, put the ladder up the wall, climb over the ladder, pull the ladder up, put the ladder back down, and go down the ladder into the other house. And Dick had Jimmy the window, and we were in the other house, and that's where we were rehearsing. And it turns out that the guy who got the job...
Nana, it was Nana house.
Yeah, there was lots of this.
No,
this wasn't now a rental price.
Lovely landlord.
Yes, and it turns out that the lad that he did get first didn't like this walk up and down. He thought it was really unprofessional, so he skedaddled. And then Dick asked me to come on board, and I thought this was the best effing thing ever to go up a ladder. And I was in heaven. I was in absolute heaven. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I'm in a squat and I'm making theatre, and I don't know what he's saying, but I love it. And that was 6 years ago, and we've been more, maybe 7 years ago. And yeah, working
3 shows actually. That's 3 shows. isn't it?
three full shows.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. For me, like just that story is. I remember reading about the theatre makers coming together in Hamburg immediately after the Second World War, and you know the kind of conditions that they were making theatre, and that compulsion to gather together and you know make something different and make something artistic out of ruins, you know, and out of the ruin of civilization and the ruins of buildings and so on. The content of the work. I mean, were you a big? I mean, you said that you've already explained that you're drawn to the idea of news and that you know the question of whether it is knowledge or whether in fact it's performance and so on and so forth. Were you an avid newspaper reader? Did you follow international events? Did it all make sense to you when you began to read it, or were you really starting from nowhere with that?
Oh boy, yeah, I was. You know, I tried to read the big books, you know, and then yeah, I was to a degree.
Yeah.
But you know what? Back then, I was. But everybody has become a news addict in the last 4 years, hasn't it? I mean, that's my feeling. Like I thought I was a knowledgeable fellow back then, but maybe you're saying you haven't. But I don't know.
Well, I was marvellously impressed by the audience, as I always am, by the way, in Castleblaney and you know, like in County Monaghan and in my work travelling around Ireland myself, you know, with the sophistication of people, which I think is often underestimated by politicians, by elite artists, and so on and so forth. And I thought that the level of engagement, the questions that were being thrown, reflected a kind of quite a sophisticated understanding of where you were coming from and what was going on. What about that question that Richard has just posed? I mean, are you all reading the news? Are you finding it helpful to read the news? Or
Here with Brexit.
do you read about anything other than Brexit?
No, well, recessions have killed my interest in current affairs. Driving to work every day, commuting up and down to Dublin, where I was doing, and nothing but doom, gloom, and more doom.
Okay.
I was seriously thinking about crashing the car. You know. So I've turned off the radio back then, and I haven't turned it back on again. I'll listen to audiobooks, I'll listen to CDs and stuff, but I just lost the interest in current affairs, and the world could be a war, and I wouldn't really know.
Yeah.
I've also gone off the news, and I find that when I go back in, like gone for a few months, and you're back up to date. It's just like Coronation Street. You're straight in there.
Same.
It's turned into so.
It has.
It's
Current
so.
affairs is so.
It is
Yeah.
absolutely.
I remember many years ago, actually, there was an interview with, he had been an RTE newsreader, Frank somebody, and he had suffered a massive heart attack from stress. And he was admitting to whoever it was Pat Kenny or somebody was interviewing him, an old colleague, and he was admitting that he had completely stopped reading the news to protect his own mental health and his physical health.
How
And I
much
think
do you value your mental health compared to your desire for being informed? One has to trump the other.
yeah, it's
You've got to stop someplace. You've got
Yeah.
to protect yourself.
yeah.
I would have had a similar experience as well during the downturn, where regardless of what station you tuned into, it was just more and more depressing. And that's when I discovered Lyric FM.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to Lyric FM since. But it just had become so harrowing. You felt that it was penetrating your whole being, and it was infiltrating your whole day and changing your whole attitude to everything. So Marty in the morning, I highly recommend it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's always been like that. You know, in 10 years' time, people will be reading books about today. You know, it'll be all put together in a book form. You can read it in a week and deal with that 10-year period in a week reading that. It'll be digestible. It's just because you're in the middle of it and it's every day. Like, Watergate didn't happen in a week. Watergate went on over years.
Yes.
We're living through Watergates at the minute, but it's just you get bored with it.
Yeah.
But whenever it's digestible in 10 years' time, it'll be very interesting again.
Yeah.
Something back and so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to turn to Shane again. Just Shane, about the act of performing. So when you met Dick, you said that you had absolutely no idea what he was talking about, but that you were interested. So, what kind of performing had you been doing up to that point? Like, how would you describe your...
I suppose I was still learning my trade. I'm not trained as an actor or anything. I totally fell into it. I joined an amateur group just for something to do. In Dublin, I didn't know anybody in Dublin. I just joined the amateur group just to make friends, essentially. And I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And there was something, I don't know how to say it. There was something that I knew that as soon as I found it, I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And so I was just learning. I was doing everything. My very first role was the Jolly Green Giant, painted in green. And I just did everything. I absolutely did everything. I did short movies. I did theatre. Anything I saw. I actually worked with David Main.
Yeah.
Randomly, yes. I was in a. Remember Dr. Seward's Dracula?
Yeah.
David was in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, essentially I trawled around and I just found any kind of work at all. I just did anything. I did tours, Halloween tours, I did theatre, I did movies, I did short movies, I did adverts, did anything at all because I didn't know anything and I was just learning. And that's probably why I was interested in this, because at that stage I'd been acting for maybe 3 or 4 years and I had got somewhat to grips with acting, I think. And then Dick came along and he was like, no, don't act.
Yeah.
What do you mean don't act? I'm an actor. I was like, don't act. I don't know what you're talking about at all. And he told me to be a newsreader. He says, I want you to deliver the lines as a newsreader. I'm like, I really have no idea what you're talking about at all. But I was just curious.
Sorry, just for clarity, was that in relation to this piece?
No, a different piece. The first time I worked with him.
It's the third time we worked together.
It was just interesting and curious, and there was something about it. There was something about it that just made sense to me or something. And I think it's one of those things that came along at the right time for me, which was fantastic. And Dick has done wonders for me as an actor, I think. I don't say that very often, but I think he's one of the 3 pillars of what I consider myself as an actor to be. Meeting Dick was one of those pillars because he really, really showed me a different kind of acting. And that's the kind of acting I've become, or actor I've become.
How would you describe that? I mean, can you describe what kind of actor you become?
Mad.
I mean, you were a newsreader at one point tonight, but you were around other things.
I love that piece that we had on Syria, where there was interaction back and forth. That was an act. I'm an actor and I'm acting. That's live, and that's new and that's interesting. You're giving me information, and I've got to spin it and I've got to take it back, and I've still got a character, but I've still got to be able to manage that. And that liveness, I think, is where the magic is in theatre.
Yeah.
I think that it's just amazing because that could have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's about managing that, because a lot of the theatre I have done and continue to do and I still enjoy and everything like that really doesn't make any difference what you guys do. It's me giving a line to you and you giving a line back to me, and I'm going to go over there and I'm going to sit over there, and that's great and that's fine. I enjoy that and that's fine. But what I really love is turning out and seeing, what are you doing? What are you up to? Dermot, what are you at?
Yeah.
Smiling. Stop smiling. No, but that's what I mean, is that connection, because I think there's as much to get. Like, that's great. We're giving a lot of performance here and we're giving, but I want to take as well. I want to see what you're doing. I want to see what you're feeling, and I want to go off that, because that's the beauty of it. And if people are sad, that's something I have to take on board and move with, and that's brilliant.
Yeah. And as a piece of theatre, I mean, again, the quiet man here. I mean, but Brian, your soundtrack, for want of a better term, like, was absolutely integral to the piece. And I'm just wondering, to what extent was that improvised, and to what extent was it calculated?
Probably more calculated than
Yeah.
improvised
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
But in order to perform it tonight, there was a lot of improvisation that
Yeah.
took place.
Yeah.
And James mentioned how long he's been working on this, and he is one of the haggard veterans of Oneday. I haven't been on board quite that long, but maybe the primary time of my development of the music I played this evening was late last summer, and we had quite a period of weeks where we were rehearsing quite intensely. Dick mentioned during the show that we had spent a week in Cowhouse in County Wexford, and if anyone's looking for a place to do some work of that kind, it is excellent. And
Great food.
the scenes that were played this evening and have been playing really took on, I think everybody was homing, in the act of homing those scenes, and it was kind of the perfect time, I think, for me to be coming in and trying different ways around, different aspects of sound, sometimes more, sometimes less. And through that period there would have been a lot of improvisation.
Yeah.
And that which worked, well, one could say then it kind of became calculated in a way. That's something that deserves to happen again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shane mentioned, I mean, Shane, you're actually a really, really good advertisement for not training. That having been said, you know, and I mean, I'm at an age where I can freely admit that I received very, very little training myself, but that was largely because it wasn't out there, particularly in Ireland. Whereas I tend to kind of wag the finger now and sort of say, you know, like you need to go through your 2 years in the Beckett Centre or the Lear or the Gaiety School of Acting or Dundalk Institute or whatever it is to just get the basics. But it's very refreshing to just encounter a performance of that magnitude, actually, that arises from an intuitive skill. But can I ask about your own journey from architecture into theatre, because, and maybe it's something for both yourself and James, because my question about whether the drumming was calculated or not, because it just felt like a seamless part of the work. And I know that is very unlikely to have happened by accident, because when you see that kind of thing done badly, it feels terrible. When it actually works seamlessly like that, on the emotions and on the intellect, there's an intelligence behind that. So can I just ask you about where, you know, how you have learned these things?
Learned which now?
How to integrate the elements and
Yeah, I didn't go to school either. I studied architecture, so then I dropped out. Before the recession, actually, I dropped out, and and I just started doing it on my own. Yeah, started just trying to put things together on my own and making mistakes. Is that what you're saying? How do you get?
Did you have formal training as a director or as a writer?
No, and I think honestly I think training and going to school is great because you make contacts. And I think that's the best. That's the only reason it's going to go there, you know. And like, I don't know, you go to Harvard or someplace like this, and as if I know, but like talking to people, like they don't learn anything more than you'd learn in Dundalk IT, but they make contacts, and those contacts mean they get the best jobs. I mean, maybe that's a little bit of a simplification, but it's not too much of a simplification either, you know.
Yeah.
And an acting school, it would be good to go to get contacts. And so I just read a lot and did my own, just read a lot and tried things out, and then tried to get fellas into squats like Shane to do what I asked them to do, and some people did and some people didn't, and then you get at it, yeah. But there is if your other question is then like in the room, how does it come together into something that's formed? I will say that like I think there has to, like, there's constantly a discussion about what the play is about and what it means, and the drummer is not just doing the drums, and the actor isn't just doing the actor. Like Brian and Shane are very involved in discussing the project and what we think about life and what we think about the world, and we sometimes agree, sometimes we don't agree, and you know, all that discussion and talk is kind of intellectual activity, isn't it? And it makes. At first we had to debate a lot of things, but now we actually kind of know what the right things to do are, you know. But it comes from talking about it and actually understanding, like, how are we going to relate to the audience? Like, is it a good thing if the audience reacting in one way, or is it a bad thing? Like, I don't know. Like, we had a big debate about how to do the start. I don't know, this is boring for you, but
no, not at all.
like, if your friends come in, do you pretend to be an actor or do you pretend to be Richard or Shane? You know.
Yeah.
And then, but then if you get too much into Richard and Shane, you suddenly, they're asking you about, did you pay your bills last week, and like, you know, that $5 I owe you, and then asking you, did you get your mother about that? And it gets too deep, you know. And so we talked about it for a while, and then Shane came up with the idea that it'll be like being at work at a stall, a market stall. So you can chat a bit, you acknowledge, but you're working, you know, and you go back. And suddenly we worked out the right way to approach it, you know. And yeah, that's through talking and thinking.
Yeah, and it was a simple and wonderful moment when you were all suddenly called to order. You came to the stage here.
Yeah.
Then there was a bit of shenanigans with mobile phones and so on. But like there was that real sense of, you know, I think we were all wondering, like, when does it begin? Has it begun? But then it began. Then it began, and then it was the formal. I just felt that the formality of it actually became evident in a really good way, in a really strong way. But again, just simple things like, you know, like like when to come forward, when to stay back, you know, after that huge moment. You know, there were so many huge moments, but like the moment where you really became almost like physically distressed, and then you very quietly told a story. Like, I just think those kind of patterns in it were superbly realised in my view. So yeah, I mean, I think I think the piece itself spoke so much about your process and revealed itself. This has been really interesting to open up. I'm just wondering, does anybody have a question that they'd like to pose? Yes, lots of them, yes, yeah.
Real, but like, did you actually drive to that house and go to the door and no one answered?
Yeah.
What were you going to ask if they answered? I
I was going to ask them, like, who lives here, and
what were you going to say though? Like, what were you asking? Someone opened the door, like, hello,
yeah. I'll just say, I go
why
like,
did you run away from the like, what were you going to say?
Well,
Shane was going to be there tonight going, get.
or someone like Shane, yeah.
Isn't it funny? That's the story that's lingering in my mind too.
Yeah.
The whole Farm Road story.
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to wonder, why did you tell that story? Because it didn't go anywhere. And is it just to show what we all want out of a story like that? We want to make the man wrong. We want to know the full story behind the headlines.
Yeah.
And we want to be better than those people because we know they've done wrong. We want to be able to chastise them. I couldn't understand what it was that what were you throwing that story out there?
Yeah,
It was so aggravating that you couldn't finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to know very much something else. And what is the other thing? Do you think? You kind of said it there, I think, or something.
Well, I felt I wanted to know the whole detail behind it because I wanted to be probably better than that person because they'd wronged. And particularly because of the element of the big money in it.
Yeah.
You wanted to make that person very, very wrong.
Yeah. Like they were
And
already
that's why
characters, weren't they? Kind of like
Pardon?
a tax inspector. You're like, come on now, who the hell is this guy?
Yes.
Yeah, how does a tax inspector have that much debt?
Yes.
You have to have had that
It's
money to have that
disappointing
debt.
that the story
Yeah,
didn't
it's
have,
fascinating.
wasn't fleshed out, that you didn't hear all the gory details. It was so disappointing.
But I think that was the point, was
Yes.
it not? It was just that one little story,
Yeah.
and there's no more about it. It was all
Yeah.
finished.
And how much you can do, like that piece, I think you could see it was a tiny piece in it, and how much time and effort you can give something so small. You're like, okay, this one I'm going to learn everything I can about that.
Yeah.
And trying to.
Was it also for us to examine our motives as well in wanting to know more about it? Were we supposed to say, well, why do I need to know all of that, and why am I so agitated about the whole thing? Is that,
I mean,
why do you still think about that when the horrific stories he told?
Yes, exactly.
And we're not
yes,
thinking twice about it. I don't remember any of the names you said. The massacre, and I should. But then I did cop myself on whenever you said you went to the house. I was like, here, this is ridiculous. I should care more about it. And I do, but I got so wrapped into your storytelling. I was like, oh jeez.
Wait, I still want to know what your first words are going to be when they answered the door.
I just like introduce myself and say I'm working in theatre.
Yeah.
That usually disarms people a little bit, and I came across this story. And
how did you get away with it?
How did you get it?
Yeah, I mean, what would they say to me? Like they might, I more likely they just tell me like no comment or something like that, you know. But even that's something like that you'd see the person's face, and I don't know why it's like you'd see their face, it would be like, oh yeah, I don't know what you'd judge. Oh, she's rich. Yeah, she's still got gold necklaces or something.
But we wanted to judge them or wanted to make them wrong or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah.
it is, but
Is it like village gossip?
yes, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then in the middle of all, there was a one-line story about the post office closing. Where was that?
That was in the, it was over in the west, either the Connacht Tribune or the Connacht Sentinel. I can't remember.
In Mayo, it's in Mayo, Knockmore. Is it?
No, in Mayo.
Knockmore. That was the name of the place. Yeah.
Lollipop earpiece.
What happened to the post office? It closed down.
She knew it was not more. She said it.
Yeah.
Do you act in all of, like, the way that you said this is the third performance? I've never been to any performance by your theatre
No.
group. But is it usually in this format? And do you usually be on the
No,
stage?
it's no different format. I think I would consider it a different format. And the 3 shows I've done with Shane, different format. And I did act a little bit in the first one, and then I pulled myself out of it as a character. And that was only because we were poor and I couldn't afford anybody. And then no, I tried not to be in it, and I tried not to be in this for ages, until I think at the end
It was quite late in the
the
game.
director decided that it didn't make sense. Like, unless I was the one saying, you know, I did this or I went out to the house, and it wouldn't make sense with somebody.
How did you choose the day for the newspapers? You know, the 10th of March or the 12th of March 2012, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Why that day, or did
You don't-
something
you don't wanna
about
know.
it just...
Yeah.
How
I
do
do.
You
Yes,
don't wanna
I
know.
do.
I do.
Do you?
I'll just tell you, like, it's kind of complicated why it's that day, but it's not interesting actually. But and I can't forget. But we did want it at that time to be. At the time we started 2015, 3 years ago, was kind of recent enough to not be history. Like, there was no books written. That kind of idea, you know, it wouldn't be history, but it also wouldn't be current affairs. It was kind of in that at that time, and now it probably is history. Like, but at that time, that was kind of why I picked roughly that time. And I was interested in that period, yeah. And then it was a coincidence. I got that newspaper to Galway, and I was in the paper,
And that sort of...
and that time, and I could really locate myself in that picture, even with the Galway Occupy protest. You know, I knew where I was, and it seemed like
You're in this.
I mean, yeah, but it was it was in the listings, like the show was mentioned that I was working on.
Oh,
Tenuous, like.
yes, yes.
But nonetheless, you know, I'm there in print.
Yeah.
Such a cool concept to pick a day and then.
Yeah. So the question over here.
But you could take any day in the last 5 years and you have the exact same stories that you had back in 2012.
Yeah.
If you went back to the papers then and look at the paper in the last 5 years for a particular day, you would have the same atrocities happening all over the world. Basically, it's history repeats itself all the time.
Yeah. That's what we kind of learned. Yeah, it was like the same thing. Yeah. Like Afghanistan maybe got replaced by Iraq, and then
Yeah. I mean, it is one of the wonderful things about the work is that you didn't pick the day of 9/11 or the day of Bloody Sunday, or you picked what felt like a random day, and yet for the people in the village or in the enclave in Syria, that wasn't just an ordinary day. It was a day of nightmares for the people in Afghanistan and so on. So and I think that is something that comes over in the show. Just is that if you were this morning, I suppose like we were all obsessed by last night's shenanigans in the House of Commons, but there are probably people in another part of the world for whom that's just a distant news story, and there's something much more pertinent to them, either the closure of their post office or a massacre.
Yes. Syria is still going on.
Yeah. I thought halfway through that I was going to find the whole thing very pessimistic, and yet for some bizarre reason it didn't feel pessimistic, even though it's showing us something terrible about the world. Can you talk a bit about your sense of the world and like what you draw from this? Do you see hope?
I honestly, we were doing the project, and that was one thing that just didn't sit with me very well as we're doing it. Like, this is not a pessimistic play, you know. It's not about everything is random and so we don't do anything. You know, that's that defeatism that I think might be inherent in the format, you know, because it's just information, and they say information without story or without a kind of like beginning, middle, or end defeats you. You just kind of go, I don't know where this is going. Doesn't make becomes very defeating. And I didn't want that in this show, you know. Am I talking too much?
No.
I'll tell you where the father thing came in. Now, my father's just an ordinary man, you know. But I learned as the time went on, as we're doing the project, that just because everything is random and chaotic, we're improvisers as humans. We're improvisers, and we have to deal with the random. And in a way, that's what becoming an adult is to go, yes, we're not too sure what's going to happen, but we're going to use our intelligence as best we can, and we're going to try and work it out. And sometimes it doesn't go right, and sometimes it doesn't go wrong, but you got this, I don't want to use a gender word, but like man up and just deal with things, you know. And of course for children, you can't tell them this because it would disturb them too much, you know, that like, yeah, we don't know if there's going to be money here next month or something like this, you know. You have to try to protect them from that. But as adults, I think it's a positive thing and a kind of energetic thing if you accept the challenge, you know, and accept it as a...
I think you guys have been working really, really hard. I think it's probably time to wrap up. I mean, one other thing I just sort of wish to express myself is that even though the stories of massacres and the terrible stories were from faraway places, that I felt that the work had a very particular resonance for me here in my home county of Monaghan, and you know, like by the border, and in relation to just the sense of anxiety that is about at the moment, you know, about past, and you know, that we haven't travelled a long way from that sort of thing and what's going on. And also, you know, because in the last couple of years with the more mature way that we've revisited our history, go back over 100 years and so on, you know, and even before that, that the kind of things that are described in such vivid detail actually felt very, very, very real, because they're not a million miles from our own kind of ancestral history, or indeed things that we ourselves, you know, have actually lived through and seen. And so, you know, I wondered at one point about in a way, almost the ethics of playing with that. For me personally, I didn't have a difficulty in the end, because I felt it was handled in a way that was never disrespectful and yet never reverential, you know, and I think that's part of the achievement. I'm just going to finish with a question to yourself, Shane. Bring it back to like Aniala and Castleblaney and so on, you know.
And the burglary.
Yeah, and the burglary. Yes, indeed. Yes. But what next? I mean, you know, I was earlier today. We were calculating. I think it's 23 years since you left Our Lady's Secondary School. Just over the hill here, you know, and you've been on quite a journey since, you know, to become the artist that you are now. Do you know what's happening next, or where you're going, or?
No, I don't have a clue. I'm doing more rehearsals in October for another show, and again, I don't really know where that's going or what's happening with it. But no, I don't really have a master plan of where I'm heading or anything like that.
You're working on another project, aren't you?
If I'm working on another project with Dick, oh, free guy. I'm doing. Jeez, I totally forgot. Sorry. I'm doing a piece with Dick in the Dublin Theatre Festival next week. Sorry, totally forgot about that. I haven't started rehearsals. My head has just been totally in this. Sorry.
Give us the detail, because some of us may be in Dublin next week. So,
there you go.
It's a work in progress. So just for a show that I'm writing with a writer from Israel, and. Loosely, we were trying to compare both our fathers. We met in a theatre workshop, and we were like two pretentious young men, not young men anymore, but like whatever age we are. And then like my dad was, he was, let's just say he's a Sinn Féin supporter, and kind of loosely involved in. Anyway, I shouldn't divide it. And my friend's dad was in the Israeli army, you know, and we'll both be kind of nationalistic men, you know, and I'd imagine they'd have a lot in common. They're both kind of passive men who are also nationalistic, and honestly, we don't know exactly, but we started to write each other's fathers. So I started to write this Israeli character, and he started to write this Irish character.
And you're presenting.
And we're presenting that then,
Very,
you know. So
very good. Well, that's something to look forward to. And where's it going on and when?
it's on in Dublin Theatre Festival it's the 5th of October, which is a Saturday.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just look it up on the Dublin Theatre Festival website if you're
Father's
around
Day it's
Dublin.
called.
Yeah. Anybody who feels
Father's
they would
Day?
like more
Was it called
of this.
Father's Day, yeah?
Father's Day.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Just before you finish, can I just say thank you to everybody who come in. We were really scared that we wouldn't get an audience, and we were very, very glad to see every single one of you come in. Thank you so much for giving us your Thursday and for trying something out, because it's a bit strange, a bit different. But thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I think we'll leave it on that. Okay.
Thanks a lot.